Hi everyone, I'm John Diamond and welcome to the first Entuity Tech Talk of 2020. Today we're excited to showcase some of the new enhancements to Entuity Network Analytics version 18, recently released to you, our customers. And by the way, the BMC version of ENA 18 will be available through the BMC EPD portal within the next few days. Along with me, Pete Bartz is here to assist in rolling out the new product. A few housekeeping items before we get into today's content. The call is on mute mode to eliminate any outside noise. We will have time at the end to take questions that have been posted. Today, we of course will be using Entuity Network Analytics version 18, commonly called ENA, and our BMC customers know it as Entuity Network Analyzer for TrueSight. ENA is the upgrade to Entuity 17.0 and, of course, 16.5. For those of you who are still on 16.5 or 17.0 and are planning to upgrade this year, please don't hesitate to contact your Entuity solution engineer. We are more than happy to discuss any facet of the new product with you and help you devise an upgrade path that makes sense for your organization. ENA 18 includes a host of enhancements that will equip you with more device support, operational efficiency, and provide management capabilities into the cloud. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. Today, we are keying in on what we think are the most valuable updates to ENA 18. For your information, the complete list of enhancements is found in the Entuity Network Analytics version 18.0 release notification, which is located in the Entuity knowledge base on entuity.com. The easiest way to find that is to go into the Entuity website, go to the Support tab, ENA Help Center, and you'll find it within there. Pete and I will be showing you the following features and their value in making your ENA network management solution work harder for you. Pete's going to take you through the brand new Geographical Maps feature, an extension to the Topological Maps to add labeling capabilities, and a radical extension to the SurePath application path monitoring capability. I'm then going to take over and go through a new maintenance mode facility, talk about trending and forecasting, and Cisco VIP telesupport that we've added. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Pete, who's going to take you through geographical mapping.
Thanks, JD, and I'll share my screen out. And let's get started. This is really exciting because in addition to the current topology maps that ENA has had for a lot of releases, ENA 18 now provides a Google Map integration. Now, using this integration and the new geographic maps, you can very easily spot network issues at different locations and across different groups of devices. You can see here that I've got a number of locations. These are all identified by the devices that are actually located in these individual views. So the integration leverages location information that's associated to a view and a brand new view attribute. The location, along with the configuration of a Google Map API key, enables the geomaps. So let's take a look at my installation and I'll show you how this is set up. Now again, I'm looking at the default Entuity map dashboard. Now because I've got the API key installed, and I'll show you where that's done, and I've got views that I've actually got location information associated with them, I can actually see the geographic mode and actually see a map with that information. Now I can toggle between the traditional topology mode and back to the geographical mode if I choose to. So it's very easy to do that. And if I want to focus a little bit more, let's just talk about how some of the default pieces here were set up. So I mentioned the individual views. Let's take a look at my by office view because you'll see inside of that I've got some subviews. I've got Burbank, New York, Tampa, my VPN provider as well. In order to make the geographic map function correctly, you need to add that location attribute. So it's pretty easy. You just go in and edit this view, or if you're creating a view, you'll see this. If the API key is installed correctly, you're going to see a brand new location. This field will be blank initially, and this is just going to be something that you can type into. So it's going to use the standard Google format, so street address, comma, city, comma, state, comma, country. And as you type, you'll notice that it's going to try to fill in addresses. You know, similar to what Google does, it's going to try to anticipate the address and the location that you're installing here. So once I've actually got locations set up on each one of my views, I'm ready to go, because the view is going to automatically correlate to the US. And if I cancel out of this, out of my Explore menu, you can see that. I can zoom in and out of this. So if I zoom into something that's more of a world, you're going to see that I've consolidated some of my views, and this is called clustering. And if I want to drill into a cluster, and I'll show you another example of where this can be helpful, you know, you can drill into that cluster, which has got New York and Tampa. Now, in addition to that, you'll see when I hover over the top of these, it's actually displaying the incidents. So I've got the location, I've got the number of devices that are under management, I've got indications of network services as well as SurePath paths. The incidents are actually showing me a counter that indicates the number of incidents in each severity category. So I've got 2 incidents that are currently critical. That's why the 2 is actually indicated and why red is actually indicated in this icon. Let's go back and refresh my dashboard to look at just the by office view and pick up all 4 of my views again. You can see in Burbank, I've actually got no critical incidents, but I do have some, you know, high severity incidents. So I've got a 1 and I've got the orange icon. So this is the default behavior in order to see what the state of each of my locations is. Now again, just like the topology map, if I want to drill into a specific location, just double click on the view marker, which is the round icon, and it's going to take me into that view. Now, if that view has subviews in it, you'll have an opportunity to look at a geographic map there. But in my case, I've just got devices, and I'm looking at the current topology for the devices that are located in New York. So again, very easy for me to be able to go from view, drill into a view, automatically set up the geographic mode, and see very quickly that I've got issues on the network and what those look like. Now, I'd like to take this a step further, because I'd like to be able to tell a little bit different story. Instead of talking about performance issues, I don't really care about some of the performance issues, so I don't want this to actually highlight as a color. Or I might want to take something like an availability issue, like a network outage, and highlight that. Even though it's red, I might want it to do something like pulse. So in order to do that, I'm going to make some modifications to the dashboard. Now, because this map dashboard is the one that comes out of the box, this is the system provided dashboard, I don't have the ability to modify the dashboard itself. Just like any system dashboard, in order to make changes to it, you would actually duplicate that dashboard or build another custom dashboard and include a map on that. Now, you can replace that one, you know, a custom one, and remove the default one if you choose to. Or like what I did in my case, I actually created a custom dashboard. It's just included in my menu as a pulsing dashboard. So I've just got this as an additional dashboard. Because this is a custom dashboard, I've got the ability to edit it, and I've got the ability to make some of the changes to the geographic map settings and these view markers to be specific about the story I want to tell if I'm looking at availability or performance and so on. So I'm going to go in and edit this dashboard. And let's take a look at the settings for the map dashlet itself. Now, very consistent with the other dashboards and dashlet settings, you've got a name, you've got a source, and so forth. I've got topology settings. One of the new ones is an attribute setting, and I'll talk about this in a minute as well. But if I've got the Google Map API set up on my server, I've actually got new geographic map settings that I can show. So I want to use the GeoMap for this dashboard, and I want anything that I look at that's actually got a location tied to it default to the geographic map. So I've enabled this to be the default. I can flip back and forth still between topology and the geographic map if I choose to, but I just want this to be the one that I see up front. I've got the ability to cluster markers on the map, and again, this is a way to consolidate the view markers. If you've got a lot of view markers in a city and you're looking at the US, it's a way to combine those together to tell you kind of a consolidated story. And you can drill into that, and I'll show you an example, again, to kind of reinforce what that can do for you. I can do a status or a utilization overlay. I can also include map links. I don't have those configured in this dashboard, but you can actually put layer 2, layer 3, and routing topology links that would tell you how are your different groups or how are your different remote sites connected. Where we're going to focus is on the pulsing and the color settings. Now, the view markers themselves can actually be configured to pulse. This is basically highlight the marker. It's just going to pulse. You're going to see it visually in the case of a certain set of criteria that you want to configure. So pulsing can be configured based on a couple different things. One would be severity. You could very easily just click critical, and any incident that comes into the system that is critical is going to actually drive that icon to pulse. You could do it for critical severe. You could do it for any combination of severity that you want to. Now, if it's a major incident, it's going to pulse amber, or it's going to pulse orange, it's going to pulse red, or it's going to pulse yellow, depending upon what the severity color is. I can take that a step further, and I can actually tell it to pulse based on specific sets of incidents. Now, in my case, I'm only focused on network outage. So if I'll just take a look at the filter here, and you can see that I've got network outage selected. Now, I could pulse on every incident. I could pulse on performance incidents. I can basically tell a story for this dashboard to have it highlight specific aspects of problems that are taking place in my network. So again, in my case, I'm only using the network outage. Now, the pulsing can be really helpful, and it's going to highlight and sort of visually kind of pulse in front of you. So if you're looking at the screen, this is something that's pretty easily detected as something that you want to pay attention to. But I want to take it a step further, because traditionally, and I come from an environment where maps were a big deal, and green is good, red is bad. Now, whether that's a good story or not, from a geographic map perspective, you can actually define which locations, which groups of devices are going to show green and which ones shouldn't show green. So again, based on the story that you want to tell, the color settings can be enabled. Now, in my case, I actually don't have it enabled on this dashboard. I've got another dashboard that does have it. But if I do enable it here, I've got those same selection sets, severities and incident type. Now, it's important to note that in this case, everything on my map is going to be green unless it's a critical incident or critical and severe. Okay, so this is an exclusion versus an inclusion. So I can exclude severity, so it's green unless it's something. I can also exclude specific incidents. Now, in my case, I don't have any selected for this, but if I was looking at wireless problems or if I was looking at availability problems, I can actually say you're green unless you have an availability issue, and then inherit the view marker will inherit the color and the severity and the counts from that. So again, the green mode can be really helpful to tune the map to tell a story that says, I only want to focus on specific types of issues. So in my case, you can see at the bottom, I've actually got a network outage. If I hover over this, I've got one incident that's a critical incident. That's actually a network outage on one of my devices. Because the network outage is driving the pulsing, you may be able to see, it's a little bit small on my screen, but if I make this a bit bigger, you can see that Tampa is actually visually pulsing. So again, if I look at New York, it's interesting. I've got two events there are two incidents that are actually critical. But if I actually took a look at this, you would see that these are NBAR incidents. So I've got actually application NBAR blacklist issues going on this location. So this isn't a network outage. This is a network outage, which is what's driving it as a pulse. So configuring a dashboard to tell different stories or tell a combination of stories in one dashboard is something that is extremely easy to do. If I exit this dashboard, let's just go back to the dashboard definition itself, and you can see again that I've got the ability to drill into Tampa because I've got a network outage. It's going to look at the topology map, and I've got one device that's down. So very easy to navigate and very easy to spot issues that are going on in the network. Now let's talk a little bit more about clustering and that consolidation of view markers. So I've got a lot of devices deployed in the UK. So what you can see here is I've got I've got some views, and these are some of my locations that are individually telling me that they're okay. So they're green, they got a check mark. If I hover over these, you can see that I've got no issues going on. You also can see that I've got a lot of stuff going on in this region. So in London, I've actually got a lot of locations, and I've consolidated these view markers together in a cluster. So I've got 11 locations that are actually included here. If I want to drill into this, because I do have an issue going on, let's take a look at where that's happening. You can see that I've got a number of locations that are okay, but I've actually got 10 more locations in the heart of London that somebody's got a problem. So if I take a look at that, the Entuity headquarters has actually got an issue, and I'm going to select that. And again, as an example of using custom dashboards, a selection in a geographic map can drive the contents of other dashlets, including the topology in a location. So I've very quickly narrowed down from I've got an issue to looking at where that issue is and what it is. But the consolidation mode in the clustering capabilities allows you to take locations, whether you've got thousands of locations or whether you've got hundreds or just a small number of locations, and the Google map will actually consolidate the markers together in a combined story. So let's talk a little bit more about the kind of the setup and navigation of the maps themselves. I'll go back to this one, and you probably saw me navigating around the map, but you'll notice the plus and minus sign. This is just a zoom in and zoom out capability. So I can interactively zoom out to take a look at the world. I can zoom back in. This will automatically cluster and consolidate my views together as needed. You can also use the control key and your mouse wheel to zoom in and out. If I'm in a NOC and I've actually got this set up on a large screen in a NOC, using the dark mode can be really handy. The NOC can actually tell you the story. There's some features in 18 that you can even do audible alarms if you choose to. But I can actually use full screen mode here and set the screen in the NOC up to run full screen. So navigating through this is pretty straightforward. Setting up the actual API key is also pretty straightforward. So let's take a look at that. Now, if I go to the Entuity administration pages, you'll see that I've got at the bottom a map administration section. This is brand new in ENA 18. If I select that, you've got instructions. You've also got some example dashboards that you could build just to give you some ideas. But you've got a getting started selection here that will actually take you into the Entuity Help Center and give you information as to how to set up the Google Map API key. So this is very straightforward. It's something that you can do. You need to do this on every Entuity server if you want to log into those servers and actually access information from them. If you only log in from a consolidation server, adding this to consolidation server, if that's where all your views are, is something that you can do. But remember, the location code is tied to a view. So if you've got views on polling servers, make sure to put the integration on there as well. So if you need any additional help and any additional guidance on best practices for the geographical maps and setting it up, take a look at the Entuity Help Center and go to the More Features section right here. If you scroll down, you'll see some stuff about the geographical maps. I think that covers that. Let's talk a little bit about the changes that we've made in Entuity 18 to the topology maps. Now, this is really exciting too, because one of the things that I get from customers is when I name devices, I may use an IP address as the display name for a device. In that case, if I look at a topology map by default, it's going to include that IP address. It's like, okay, where is that device? What is that device? What's the name of that device? What's the IP address of that device to get more information? And the only way to do that historically would be, let's get out of the preview mode here, because I'll come back into this in a minute. But the way to do this historically would have been to right-click, go into the Explorer, and get information about the device. Now, with an ENA 18, you've got the ability to create a dashboard that includes a topology map or a map specifically and have it include additional attributes and have those attributes display or be included as part of a tooltip. Mouse over and have information pop up in front of you. Now, if I take a look at the default map and I look at the topology, I'm not going to see this because similar to the geographic map, the default map doesn't give you the ability to customize the dashlet settings. In order to do that, you want to create a custom dashboard, and in my case, I've got one I just called Network Map Labels. So we'll go back to this, and what you can see is I've got 3 device-level attributes that are included as part of a tooltip, and I've included the IP address for the device as something that is selected and included in the map itself. Now, if you have hundreds of devices, including information like an IP address might end up giving you a lot of information in a small space, so it might not be as handy. A tooltip might be better, but you can select what you need. The way that you would do this is in the dashboard creation. As part of that, let's go in and edit this dashboard. Again, I'm going into the map dashlet. I'm going to look at the settings, and I'm going to look, in addition to these new geographic settings, I'm going to look at the topological map settings here. Each dashboard can include different sets of labels. So you can totally customize what people see based on which dashboard they're looking at. The first thing that you would do would be to add a label. Now, adding a label is going to just include device-level static attributes. Not time series data, but just static attributes specifically. Now, if you've added any attributes into your system at the device level, like asset tag or anything that you may have added, those are going to show up here as well. So you would select those. You would actually generate a list of the ones that are important. And then in each one of these, you would just select it and identify whether or not you want to include this as a tooltip or include it on the map itself. So I could take the model and I could add it in the tooltip and the map if I wanted to. If I hit done, I hit done all the way across this and just preview my map, you can see that I'm going to have more information here. Now, again, this may end up becoming a little bit noisy. I'm a fan of the tooltips, but I'm actually a fan of a combination of these attributes depending upon what you want to be able to see. So again, very easy to see, very easy to set up, and I think this can be really helpful to people as they're deploying this level of topology. Now again, for help, if you're looking for help on this topic, go to the Entuity Help Center, take a look at more features, scroll down. In addition to the GeoMap, you're going to see the TopOmap section here, and this will actually give you guidance as to how to select the attributes, how to tell which attributes are selected for either a tooltip or to be included on the map. Let's go to our next topic. This is all about SurePath. Now, this is really exciting, like JD had mentioned at the beginning of the call. SurePath has been really, really looked at, and we've spent a lot of time understanding how customers need to use this type of analytics and what type of analytics they need. So SurePath now provides visibility into both cloud-based services as well as on-premise services. So answering the question certainly of email is slow or my cloud web application is slow. This is really hard. So SurePath has been completely revised with the introduction of a brand new agent-based path discovery. Now that allows you to do troubleshooting for public as well as private networks, and it allows you to do troubleshooting for those types of applications using an agent that can be deployed either on the Entuity server or in addition to that on a server at a remote location. So say you've got a server, you've got a bunch of stuff in New York, and you want to be able to understand how do I get to Outlook 365, or in our case, the BBC, from New York. How can I do that? How well is that application working? And by the way, I want to do the same thing in Burbank. So from a group of devices or from a location, you could actually install a SurePath agent-based path analytic to actually look at that path and identify some issues. Now, as part of these paths, understanding, let's take a look at Outlook 365 as an example. Understanding, I'll zoom this in, it's a little bit small, but understanding the path from a starting point, and in my case, this is the Entuity server because I'm using that agent, which is included on the server. I'm getting over to Outlook.365, and I'm going, this is a layer 3 TCP trace route effectively, and I'm actually looking at the path across this, but one thing that you notice is I'm tracking latency all the way across at every hop on every device, regardless of devices that are managed by me or not managed by me and living in either a service provider or the public internet. So you've got the ability to measure latency. You've also got the ability to set thresholds on latency, and I'll talk about that in a minute as well. But the effective part of this is I can look at application availability and performance in terms of latency on a very regular basis, and I can identify where I may have had problems because some of these have latency issues and some of these don't. So I can identify, was there a different path taken? What happened that actually is causing that problem? And this gets you ahead of the game in answering that question is, oh, mail is slow. Well, why is mail slow? Is it because of my network? Or is it because something is happening within the public internet or my service provider or in the cloud someplace? So in addition to this, and you'll see there's multiple paths. So I run this every 5 minutes, but I'm actually running multiple paths every 5 minutes because I want to look at multipathing. Because in many cases, there's so much resiliency going through service provider and the public carrier space that I could take multiple ways to get to an application, and I don't want to just test it once. In my case, on this one, I think we're testing it 5 times every 5 minutes. So I'm looking at the option of 5 different paths that could be taken, all of which could be triggering a latency issue or an availability issue. And actually, I've got a latency issue that's happening right about here. So I've got latency setting at, I believe, 10 milliseconds, or actually 24 milliseconds. And right now I'm hitting about 24 and 25 milliseconds. So these are the devices where I'm actually starting to indicate that there may be a latency issue with this application. So SurePath handles that multipathing. It looks at latency. It doesn't care if the devices are managed by you or not. And it's extremely easy to deploy in that fashion. So let's talk a little bit about how this is set up. So SurePath includes a brand new lightweight agent. Now there's an agent that's included on each one of the Entuity servers. And if I take a look at the administration pages, I'm going to see the SurePath administration page here as well. And I'm going to be able to configure an agent that's included on the Entuity server itself. I can also configure agents by downloading the software. This is just a lightweight Linux or Windows installation that can run on a Linux or Windows server, and you can place it on a server in a remote location or a different part of your network. So as I download this, I can actually start that up and actually include and add in agents that are running in different locations. So this is extremely easy to do, and once you've got this up and running, you can get a picture from different locations as to where you may have some specific problems. Now, don't worry. For some of our customers that are using SurePath already, SurePath in the sense where I'm looking at my monitored network, and actually let's take a look at an example here. I'm looking at my monitored network, and I'm actually monitoring the managed devices from one server to another server across multiple locations, and I'm looking for path deviations and I'm looking for performance issues here, that capability is still there. So what you've got running in terms of SurePath paths is still there and still available to you. The only thing is you'll see this as an agentless path. So agent paths will look at layer 3 connectivity, specifically, focus probably on, cloud resources and cloud applications, although it could be an internal on-prem application as well. The agentless paths are leveraging your managed network in understanding the path between, that source and destination, which are managed devices. So let's walk through the setup of a path, and let's just talk about how you can configure this. Let's take a look at Outlook 365. This is one that actually has had some latency issues. So let's just use this as our example. Now, from that initial dashboard, you'll see, actually, I'll go back to this. You can actually create a path right here. Or in my case, I'm just going to select this and edit it. And what you'll see here is I've got the ability to leverage an agent. I could turn this off and go agentless. I'm defining the destination. So I'm going to Outlook office.365.com. This is just my destination website, and I'm selecting the TCP port that I'm actually going to run this over. So I could pick a different TCP port. I could pick a different application that's not necessarily a web app. As long as this destination and this port are responding, I've got the ability to set this up. I'm going to source this from my server, which is actually located in our London office. So if I've got multiple agents configured, I can select from any one of these. Again, I'm doing this all from one location. I'm selecting this to run every 5 minutes, although I can change it to go daily or hourly as I need to. And I'm now going to set a threshold. So with an agent-based path, I've got the ability to set a threshold for that path and have that threshold detect any type of application issues based on high threshold and generate an alert if it is going over that, that 24 millisecond threshold. So you can set this however you want to. Once you set this, then you also want to look at a batch percentage. Now let's talk a little bit about what a batch percentage is. In the case of a path, again, you run it every 5 minutes, but each one of those 5 minutes is going to include a number of trace routes. So by default, it's 5. You can make it 10. You can make it 2. I mean, you could make it whatever number. 5 is pretty effective for detecting issues. But once you do that, based on those 5 trace routes, my percentage, which was actually set at 40%, 40% of those would have to be successful. They'd actually have to reach their destination for that to pass. So if that doesn't, then I'm going to generate an issue there as well. Now, in addition to just configuring the agent, if I've got an agent that's got multiple IP addresses, say I've got an internal and I might have an external IP, I can identify the IP on that agent server that should be used as a source. Or if I don't care, I'll just say pick any one that you want. So setting these up is extremely straightforward, very easy with the UI. Once it's set up, it's going to take a few minutes to build into the system and do its first set of polling. And then you'll start seeing responses for that in the UI. Now let's take a look at our Outlook path and look at the same one that we were actually taking a look at earlier. You can see that I've got some latency. I've got my latency threshold set at 24, and currently my latency is 22, which is why this one's okay. I don't have any packet loss. You can see some inventory information as to where this is going. And I can look specifically at the path, and I can look at the historical paths that have been running every 5 minutes. So I can look at a history of paths in this dashboard. Now, say, for example, you may want to generate some alerts in case these paths take a very odd route. You do have the ability to do a required node and a blacklist node definition. So in the case of maybe looking for if I've got redundancy out of this site, and if I'm going out a redundant router and a redundant link, I could actually add in the IP address of that router as a blacklist. So I could actually add a blacklist. I could add an IP address in there, and I wouldn't actually even have to manage that device if I didn't want to. So you can put a blacklist in that says, if it ever sees this node in the path, generate an alert. You can do the same type of thing with the required nodes. So say, as an example, this is in Liquid Web Space. This is not in my own managed space, but say I wanted to add that to the required list. I could do that as well. So if I don't see that in my path, it's going to, again, generate an alert. So this required and blacklist capability, especially if you're using the agent list paths, would be similar to looking for path deviations. If a path takes a deviation from what your standard is, it's going to generate an alert. In ENA 18, if a path takes a different direction and goes through a router that might be your backup router, add that router to a blacklist. So if it sees it, it's going to indicate that there's a change in that path. So pretty easy to set up. Some other things that you can do in the UI, because if you look at these icons, you can see that a lot of these are, even though they're showing me the latency in the device, they're in service provider space, and I may not really care about that. So if I have a really big path, I might consider some of this as being kind of noisy. I can collapse the internet nodes down to just show the devices that I'm looking at. So I've collapsed the internet nodes, which are 37 of them, down into my source, and then that combination, and then the endpoints that I'm actually getting to for Office 365. Now, even in this case, this is a little bit hard to take a look at if I want to see everything. So I'm actually going to flip this and turn it vertical. So this is not a bad way to look at this. And I actually can collapse this down. If I want to see this detail, just double click and it's going to take a look at it and put it back into kind of that full device mode. So just like other components in Entuity, paths can be added into services. They can be added into views. They can be integrated with the Google Maps. They can be tied into other components. So I can look at all my paths. I've got some agentless paths. I've got some agent paths. I've got paths that are using different agents, because I've got agents scattered kind of around the globe for this one. And I've actually got dashboards that can leverage a Google Map integration that is only looking and caring about path issues. So I can actually take a look and select New York. I can have it pull up and show me that if there's an Office 365 path, and if I select that path, it's going to actually highlight. Now, if I actually, let's pick one that kind of blanks out the screen and do this. So I can select New York again. I can select a path, and it's going to generate the path. This is just another way to leverage kind of the dashboard integration and the path details that you've got access to. Same type of thing. You could create a dashboard that just shows you all your paths and just dynamically select a path, whether it's a agent or agentless path, and identify if you've got some problems, which I do here. So again, if you have any questions about setting paths up, take a look at the Help Center, go into more features, and if you scroll down there, you'll see SurePath. I think with that, I'll turn it back over to JD, and we'll take a look at some of our other topics.
Well, thank you very much, Pete. Now going to spend a little while talking about a few other things, including maintenance mode. So bear with me one moment. Here we go. And here we'll take a look at the ability to define periods of time, either a one-off period or a scheduled recurring period, where one or more devices are going to be allowed to have outages, and those outages will not count against the availability reports. So let me begin by showing you the list of standard availability reports that we have. So if I go to availability reports, you'll see a whole list down here. Most of these, not including the port availability, but most of them will allow a maintenance window to be defined. If I were to go to infrastructure availability, you'll see there's a new option here to enable the use of maintenance modes, maintenance windows. So if that was selected, and any of the devices that are covered by this report had maintenance windows defined within the period of the report, any outages on those devices during that period would not count against this report. You can turn it off just by unchecking it, so you can define whether or not you want to take maintenance windows into account by removing any outages that occurred during the maintenance window. Now, before I show you how to set up a maintenance window, I want to point out one extra feature that was added. This was added at patch 8 of version 17, which is the very latest patch, and it allows you to run various of our reports in a different time zone. So any time information on the report is presented in the time zone of your choice. So that's in there at the very latest patch on 17 and in 18 as well. Okay, let's go back, and we're going to take a look now at how to set up maintenance windows. There's more than one way. You can do it from the context menu of a device. However, within the administration menu, there is a maintenance mode option here. This allows you to create one or more maintenance window definitions. I'm going to create a new maintenance window, give it an arbitrary name. You give it a sensible name in your environment, and I would strongly recommend you give it a description so you can remember what it was all about. And then you can select the devices that are going to be included within it. Now here you will select devices. I'm going to go in and go into, for example, this view, and I'm going to take these two devices in California, CA01 and 02. Let's go back, and then I'm going to take everything that's in the New York headquarters. I'm not going to pick and choose. I'm just going to take everything there. Now, there's an important point here. Although I've selected a view, what that means is that it's going to take all of the devices within the view right now. If I say done, then you'll see those Californian devices, those two from that Burbank view, and then all of the devices from my headquarters view, which was HQ. So all of those are selected. Now, the fact that I pointed out that it was taking the devices from the view rather than the view itself is important. If at a later date you were to add more devices to that view, then they wouldn't automatically appear in that maintenance window. So just be aware of that. This is choosing by the device rather than by the view. Now, the default mode of working with a maintenance window is that it will impact the way the availability reports work, whether they include unavailability within the maintenance window or not. There is an additional capability that's optional. If you enable this, then any event generated by the devices that fall within a maintenance window will also have their events and therefore the associated incidents suppressed during that maintenance window. So that's optional. If you want a one-off maintenance window, you can define it here. Either everything after a particular date and time or between two date and time stamps. Alternatively, you may want to set up a recurring maintenance window. If we enable the scheduled maintenance window, in the schedule, you have three modes of operation. First of all, you determine the period within the day, the beginning and end. Then, if it's going to be every day, you would choose this mode. If it's going to be specific days of the week, like every Saturday, or maybe every Saturday and Sunday, it's your choice, you'd do that. Alternatively, if you wanted one or more specific days of the month, you would choose here. If you wanted it on the 1st of the month, or maybe the 15th of the month, then you can select it here as well. You can choose multiple. So once you've done all of that, then the only thing left for me to talk about is this final mode, the invert scheduled rules. What that does is instead of there being a maintenance window between the times that you specify, it will be outside the times you specify. And the best reason for that is that if you want a maintenance window midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning, you would just specify midnight to 4 o'clock in the morning and use it in the ordinary mode. If you wanted it at 10 o'clock at night, 2200 hours to 2 o'clock in the morning, that will cross the midnight boundary, at which point your best way of doing that would be to enable the inversion mode and specify that the window begins at 2 o'clock in the morning, ends at 10 o'clock at night, and then it will flip it, which means 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning. So that said, you would then create it and you'd see it here, and that would apply to all of the devices that have been included within it. So that is how to define maintenance modes. Now, we're coming on to a new topic, trending. We did have a trend prediction feature already in version 17, but that only took the data that was selected to be displayed into account when generating the trend, which frankly isn't really enough history to get a valid statistical trend created. I'm going to go and find an interesting looking port. Here's one with a certain amount of data. And in fact, by default, this has no trend defined for it. If I were to take a look at the menu here, you'll see that there is a 4-week trend option. If I were to enable it, then you will see a dashed line appear. That dashed line, although on here, there is a very, very slight trend slope. It looks almost horizontal. That's around 50%. So that data, looking back over the last 4 weeks, doesn't appear to be drifting up or down very much. There is a second mode of trend generation, and this one is more controllable on your part. The 4-week option here, which is defined at runtime, is 4 weeks, and that's the only option available for it. If I were to turn that off, it will allow me to define an additional one. I'm going to go into Configure Chart, and on a specific attribute, and I've only got one attribute here, then if you look down the bottom, you've got some further controls. If I turn on the display of this trend line, although it defaults to 4 weeks, I can actually choose 2, 4, 8, or 16. I'm going to choose a 16-week trend, so it can take the previous 16 weeks worth of data samples into account. And I've also got the ability to determine whether or not a prediction is shown. I'm going to show the prediction out 3 months into the future. That will be shown by appending it to the legend down the bottom. Naturally, if you're not already displaying the legend, you're not going to see it. So you would have to go in and enable that. If it wasn't being displayed, you would enable that in the chart settings, and you've got the legend display controls here. So I've enabled that, and I'm going to save it. You'll see that when the chart rebuilds, that we've got prediction down the bottom. That's actually a 16-week legend, 16-week trend that you're basing that calculation on. Quick word of warning. If you have the 4-week trend option enabled, that is what will be used, and there is no prediction on that. So even if you've got the other modes enabled in the chart configuration, then they will be ignored if the 4-week mode is enabled. They only come into play if that mode is disabled. Then you can see it. So that was trending. I want to show you another administrative change that we've done, which will be really handy when it comes to installing new licenses. Previously, that involved having access to the file system of the server, shutting Entuity down, replacing a file, and then starting it back up again. We now have, if you were to go to the main menu and system information, if you look along here for the license icon for each server, if you click it, you'll get your license health page. This button down the bottom is new. If you click it, then it allows you to upload from your own local file system on your PC, running the browser, a license file. That will be installed at runtime. It will be adopted immediately. You will not have had to shut the server down to install it, and you do not need access to the file system to install it. Naturally, only administrators are allowed to do that. So the last thing I wanted to mention was that we have made some significant enhancements to our Viptela support. This is Cisco Viptela SD-WAN. To begin with, starting at the most recent patch of 17 and the new 18 version of ENA, you can take the vManage cloud controllers under direct management. This enables all of the vEdge devices which make up the SD-WAN to be visualized, and it will allow the alarms that are generated in real time by made visible through the vManage cloud controller to be turned into ENA events and therefore corresponding incidents. These are the vManage events that are raised relating to alarms, polar failures, and polar overruns. They will open and close corresponding incidents. There's also a new summary dashboard dedicated to vManage cloud controllers. It has 5 dashlets within it. There's a key info dashlet, a dashlet that gives you a pie chart of open incidents. There's another pie chart showing you the devices, the vEdge devices by status, a chart showing you events over time, and finally a table dashlet listing all of the vEdge devices and some further information about them. So, just to summarize, Pete told you about the new geographical maps implemented through an integration with Google Maps, and also the extension to our existing topology maps by allowing you to add additional labels that appear on the map display and also in the tooltip. In addition to that, he went over the new extensions to SurePath, which include the new agent, the Entuity agent that allows for tracing paths across unmanaged networks, like public networks across the internet to a cloud service, for example, and perform latency measurements and also visualization of multipathing. Then I talked about the trend projection and how that can be enabled. And now we get to the point of responding to your questions. So, Pat, do we have any questions?
Yes, we have a couple. Regarding geographical maps, do I have to pay Google for the map API key?
Actually, let me address it. Maybe, Pete, you can go to the administrative page and show where to get the information on this.
Sure.
We've got online help that gives you details of how to go about applying for your Google Map key. And you do, when you make the application, have to provide a credit card. Now, this credit card will not be charged under normal usage circumstances, and it would only be charged if you later then authorize it to be charged. The use of Google Maps has a monthly accounting on the number of calls to their API, which corresponds to screen updates for the Google mapping. It's basically about 28,000 screen updates within a month. If you are using fewer than 28,000 screen updates in a month, then your account will not be charged. If you're going to exceed that, then you'll need to authorize it to be charged, and there's a small charge that Google would make. But under most circumstances, we do not anticipate people hitting that limit. And so it will be academic, the fact that you've attached a credit card to it. Okay, Pat?
Thank you, JD. And then another question on geographical maps. Can the location of a view be designed by RESTful API?
Yes, in fact, it can. All of the characteristics of a view can be either defined or adjusted via the RESTful API, and that includes the location. Now, when you define a location through the user interface, that's the location of a view. Remember, we only have locations on views, not devices. So it's the view that corresponds to a marker on the Google map. When you define a location through the UI, Google is interactively giving you suggestions about locations that may well correspond to what you're entering. So it's effectively a sort of autocomplete on the as you're typing. That won't apply to the API, of course, but within the Google Map UI, we do take advantage. Here we go. So Pete's showing you that as he's typing, Google is suggesting locations that might match what it is that you're looking for. It gives the most popular ones first. Okay, Pat.
Another question. My ENA servers don't have internet access. Will I still be able to use the Google Maps integration?
Oh, yes. That's a good one. The answer is yes. And the reason is that the ENA servers do not talk to Google. It's your browser that talks to Google. So your browser is interacting with Google Maps facility from Google. It's not the server. So in order for the Google Maps to work, it has no dependence on internet access.
All right, and then we have a couple more SurePath questions. Could you provide a bit more information on the licensing requirement for SurePath? And then the second portion of it is, can you define a specific device or branch instead of an Entuity remote server as the source of the SurePath towards Office 365 or other cloud services?
Yes, I'll take that. First of all, licensing. SurePath is licensed by the path, and the number of paths that will be monitored simultaneously corresponds to the number of SurePath licenses, which are different to device licenses that will be consumed. So Entuity sells both device licenses and path monitoring licenses. Those licenses, the path monitoring, it doesn't matter whether it's agent-based or agentless, we license by the path. We do not license by the number of agents deployed. You can deploy as many as you want. It's only the number of paths that we license by. And that follows on to the next question, and that is, yes, you can deploy our Entuity agent either on Windows or Linux servers. You just download them from our administration page, and they can be deployed on any Windows server or Linux server. It doesn't have to be an ENA server. And so that can be located out at a remote site or multiple remote sites, so that, for example, if you had a corporate resource like a corporate web server or CRM system at your headquarters, then you could have multiple remote sites, each with an agent performing path tracing back to that central site. And you're having multiple opinions about the paths and access and latency to that central resource. Okay, Pat?
Thank you, JD. And then using SurePath, how can I detect what devices are mine, what are the service providers, and what devices are on the internet?
Oh, Pete, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Actually, let me take a look. Let's open up my Office 365 path as an example. And in my case, you'll see, actually, I'm going to pick a different one maybe. But what you'll see here is the icon shows a globe. So in the case of this, these are devices that I'm not managing. And actually, I'm not even managing my Entuity server, although I probably should. In that case, this would actually show up as a server icon. So all of the icons that are showing up as a globe are the ones that are owned by somebody else and not managed by me. So that's a very easy way to detect it. And even if you want to eliminate this as sort of noise from the screen, that's again where you go in and you can collapse these nodes together. Turn it vertical if you want to, and actually take all the internet nodes that, if it's a service provider issue, it's important for me to know, but it's not something that I'm going to fix. So this is an easy way to spot what's mine and what's not. Thanks,
Pete. And then last question, I've got ENA installed but can't find the pulsing mode setting on the map dashboard. How do I get to it?
Oh, Pete, would you take that one, please?
Absolutely. So let me go back and let's take a look at my map. So this is the case, again, I'm looking at by office, and I'm looking at the default map. Now, because it's a system dashboard, this is the map dashboard, I don't have the ability to modify the settings in that specific map definition. So I can navigate through it, but again, I'm not seeing anything about pulsing. The way that you would do this is to create your own dashboard. Now, I can take this as a source, and I can duplicate it. So I can make a copy of my map. I can set some access controls so I can actually see something. I always make sure to do that. Once I do this, the map dashlet is something that I can configure. If I go into the dashlet settings here, you're going to see that I've got the geographic and topology settings that I can make modifications to, and this is actually where you can set the pulsing and the green mode settings and the link type settings. Any of the config that's part of this map is done then here. But remember, it's got to be something that it's your own map. It's got to be a custom map in the system. Now, I can rename this and use this as a default map. There's ways to do that as well. But out of the box, just make sure that the system maps, both for the geographic pulsing and color settings, and even the topology maps with the labels. Using the default map isn't going to give you the ability to make that kind of adjustment.
Okay, thanks, Pete. And that's it on the question.
Okay, thank you very much, Pat. Right, okay. So at this point, I want to point out that you should keep in mind that there are a variety of helpful resources to help you quickly find information about ENA. The totally updated ENA Help Center is searchable and has an incredible number of videos to aid you in your understanding of ENA. That's available from the Help option on the main menu of ENA itself, and it's also available through the Entuity.com website. Just go to the Support tab and you'll find it there. Again, the ENA new release notification is located in this knowledge base. We'll be sending you additional supporting collateral, such as the press release, ENA overview datasheet, and the usual features by revision document when ENA is publicly released on February the 11th. What you're watching today is a sneak preview. Also note, we'll be sending you a copy of this presentation for your reference. Keep an eye out for these documents. They'll be emailed shortly. This Tech Talk has been recorded and will be available for your use on both the Entuity YouTube Center and ENA Help Center. Just look for the videos option on the Help Center. The next Tech Talk is scheduled for late February or early March, and will cover an in-depth look at SurePath. We'll hope you're going to be able to attend. If you have further questions about today's content, be sure to contact your Entuity Solutions Engineer. We're here to help you get more out of ENA. Lastly, should you have any suggestions for future Tech Talk topics, let us know. We're really serious about that. We do value your input to tell us what it is you want to know about. So send your ideas to tech.talks@entuity.com. And with that, I'd like to give you my thanks for attending today's Tech Talk, and we look forward to seeing you again for our next session, which is on SurePath.